Our Shalom Israel, Yahal Bashem Yahshai Brakathum, Yahal Shemalathum Bashem Yahshai, I.S.U.P.K, 1 West, 125th Street, Harlem, New York, under Commander General YAHANNA. This is another installment of Practical Knowledge. I'm excited today. We have a special guest, you know what I mean? As we say in the Israelite School of UPK, Alawat Panya, Rock, Yahal Bashem Yahshai Brakathum. And today we have
What's going on, priest?
Shalom, General.
All right, most high in Christ.
How you doing, sir?
I'm too wild. We got a heavy subject here tonight, or what have you. We might as well just jump right on in.
Kind of one kind, sir. Kind of one kind. So the premise of tonight's lesson is we're going to be talking about Daniel chapter 11. Through much discussion with the general Kabbalah Math, we've found it fit to go into the history leading up to Daniel 11 as well. So we're going to give a little bit of history knowledge, background on the events leading up to Daniel chapter 11, because that's crucial to understand in understanding Daniel 11 itself. So where we're going to start is the siege of Jerusalem. The siege of Jerusalem. Now, a lot of times, like you know, General, people hear the word or the term siege of Jerusalem and they automatically think of Rome. But before the siege of Jerusalem of Rome, there was a siege of Jerusalem of Babylon, correct?
That's correct.
Kind of on one kind. So we're going to read, I'll read it for you, sir. Second Kings. Kind of what kind?
I got it.
Kind of what kind?
Second Kings.
Okay.
Chapter 24, verse 10. At that time, the servants of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came up against Jerusalem, and the city was besieged.
That's it there. This is around the 600 BC. 605 BC is when the first group of brothers, the wise men of Israel, including Daniel, who we're going to discuss later on, was amongst a group of captives, not all of Israel, but a group of captives who was made captive during that time. Let me see. And then during that time, if I could keep reading, sir.
Okay.
It says.
Verse 11.
No, I'll read.
Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, and his servants did besiege it.
Right. It's a little more.
Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, he came against that the city of the Lord. You understand? Jerusalem, and his servants did besiege it. Keep going.
Kind of what kind. And in verse 12, and Jehoiakim, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother and his servants and his princes and his officers, and the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign.
He didn't want no smoke. You understand? He knew what the deal was, right?
Right.
And so he submitted himself unto that captivity. You understand? After the siege was over, he was like, this is enough. I'm going to save my people. Why? Because, you understand, you had prophets, you understand, that understood that the Lord's punishment and judgment was going to come down upon us for all of the misgivings and deeds that we have been doing in the land. And so all of these nations round about us, you understand, they was getting busy, and we were just sitting ducks because we, disobeyed.
Right. Verse 13. And he carried out thence all the treasures of the house of the Lord and treasures of the king's house, and cut in pieces all the vessels of gold which Solomon, king of Israel, had made in the temple of the Lord, as the Lord has said.
He took it a little bit too goddamn far. He cut the damn gold pieces up. This was a particular, like what we about to get into in seeing these nations. This is the Assyrian captivity was in times past, but this Babylonian captivity, the Persian and Mede captivity, the Greeks and the Roman captivity, you're going to see something about these heathens that, you know, when Yahushua comes back, you
Right.
understand, all these nations got to go into captivity,
Right.
okay? Because they have had their way with us. Go ahead.
Count on one kind. Verse 14. And he carried away all Jerusalem and all the princes and all the mighty men of valor, even 10,000 captives, and all the craftsmen and smiths. None remained save the poorest sort of the people of the land.
Right. So he decimated us, you know. He got the top draft picks and left everybody else in the ghetto or what have you. He took everything that was in our possession, all of the talent and everything, much like the heathens do in America here today. You understand? They take all the talent and leave the poorest of such in the land to fend for themselves.
What we just read in Second Kings 24 and 10 through 17 is showing that Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, besieged Jerusalem, and then after the besiege of Jerusalem, he came and ransacked all of Israel. He came and he went into our temple. He defiled the temple, of course. He destroyed the temple, burned it. You understand what I'm saying? He carried out all things precious unto us, everything we deemed holy, everything with value and things that were valuable. Nebuchadnezzar carried it away as he carried away what was valuable to the Lord, meaning the Israelites. You see? And now what's intriguing about this here, what happened in 2 Kings 24 and 10 through 17 during the time of King Jehoiakim, right? The first time Nebuchadnezzar went to Israel was, most historians would agree to the date of around 605 BC. And the second time around he came years later was around 586 BC, right? Which is during the time where he's besieged Jerusalem, besieged Israel. So now what's interesting to note is Jeremiah made a prophecy in Jeremiah 29 and 10. So we're going to read Jeremiah 29 and 10, right? So in Jeremiah 29 and 10, it reads, "For thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place." Now, this is so detrimental to understanding Daniel 11. Why? I'll explain so in just a second. Hold on one second. Right? So in Jeremiah 29 and 10, "For thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place." Right? So we see that Jeremiah prophesied that Israel, and also what's known as when Nebuchadnezzar took Israel to Babylonia, or to Babylon rather, that's known as the Great Babylonian Exile. That's what that's recognized in history. If you look up Babylonian exile, that's what that was, right? So continuing on, Jeremiah said that we would be there for 70 years. We would be there for 70 years, right? Which leads us to the next part, right? We got to understand is who Cyrus the Great is. Who is Cyrus the Great? Right? So as we just read in what is that? 2 Kings 24 and 10 through 17, you want to go back and read that.
Right.
We basically described how Nebuchadnezzar, he came and ransacked Israel. He came and he took over 10,000 captives of our chief men, women, and children, with brothers such as Daniel. Like you read the book of Daniel, that Daniel was a part of what's known as the Babylonian exile. Now it was prophesied in the book of Jeremiah, chapter 29, verse 10. If I could read it, sir.
Yes.
"For thus saith the Lord, that after 70 years be accomplished at Babylon, I will visit you and perform my good word toward you in causing you to return to this place. Right?
Okay.
So,
Jeremiah.
mm-hmm.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
You got it, General.
Jeremiah prophesied that we were going to go into Babylon for 70 years, or what have you. And us being rebellious, a lot of us, you understand, on the flip side, didn't want to heed the word of the prophet and go into this captivity, but we wanted to run down into Egypt. That's where that all come from, right?
Kind of what kind.
Go ahead.
I was going to mention that some scholars differ on the exact dates of the 70-year period in Babylon, because some said it refers to the year 605 when he first came, took the first group of servants or captives, if you will, from 605 to 535 BC, which wouldn't be 70 years from the first deportation to Babylon. But as we did the research,
It was about 3 days, right?
Right, and the most accurate way was from 586 to 516, from his last deportation to Babylon, and to the destruction of the temple and its rebuilding, which would be 70 years. You understand what I'm saying? Which, the time could be, can be,
ambiguous.
right,
Ambiguous. You
right,
understand? It's
right,
unassuming, what have you. It's not all like that in the Bible about the numbers or what have you. But of course, all the scholars and they want to get in here and rumble through this, that, and the other, trying to prove that the Bible is wrong, this, that, and the other. But you understand, these records bear witness that you understand that this is the truth. You understand, these people existed. Okay, I don't
right.
know where they come from, but this book is accurate and it's been corroborated through science. You
Mm-hmm.
understand, it's been corroborated through history and archaeology as well. Okay, so go ahead with that. Go ahead and continue.
Kind of the one kind. So now, what's important? The reason why we bringing that out is because there was a man by the name of Cyrus the Great. Cyrus the Great. If I can go to the Zondervan's Pictorial Compact Bible Dictionary,
I'm there
and
with you.
and I'll read a little bit about Cyrus the Great or whatnot. So I'm gonna go to the Zondervan's. You want the pictorial? Those of you at home, you want to get the pictorial one. It's a little bit more detailed than the smaller version, right? So Cyrus the Great, the first paragraph.
Right.
Cyrus, the son of Cambyses, king of Ashan. With the rise of Cyrus began the renowned Persian Empire, which was to continue until the coming of Alexander the Great. 7 years subsequent to the demise of Nebuchadnezzar, Nabonidus ascended to the throne of Babylon in 555 BC. He was destined to be the last ruling sovereign of the Neo-Babylonian Empire, for in the highlands of Iran, another kingdom was forging out of its own program of conquest. With the defeat of the Medes, when Astiges, I could be butchering that, but king of the Medes, was vanquished by Cyrus, the realm of Persia commenced to assume threatening proportions. Cyrus himself announced his genealogy, quote, I am Cyrus, king of the host, the great king, king of Babylon, king of Sumer and Akkad, son of Cambyses, the king of Anshan, the grandson of Cyrus, the grandson of Tiespes, right? And so I'll jump down to the third paragraph where it says, Cyrus entered Babylon in 539 BC and presented himself in the role of the liberator of the people. He allowed the images of the gods to be transported back to their original cities and instituted a kindly policy of reparation for captive peoples. His policy,
Repatriation.
what kind? It's like it. His policies of moderation naturally extended to the Hebrews, whom he encouraged to return to Judea to rebuild their temple.
Kind. And so we have Isaiah getting in the prophecy game where
Mm.
he, you understand, prophesied about Cyrus as the anointed one. You want to get that?
Count on one kind. That's absolutely excellent, sir, if I may, because Isaiah was years before Cyrus.
Right.
Talking almost a couple hundred years, approximately, right? But definitely before Cyrus's time. What is that? Isaiah 44 and
I think
20.
I think I even like it better in the Antiquities of the Jews. If you want to read from there, um, that whole smidgen after we get the scripture.
Count on one kind. So you want me to read the prophecy or the antiquities first?
The prophecy, and then let's go into Josephus and
Yes, sir.
corroborate the story once again.
Yes, sir. What's that? Isaiah 44 and 28. That saith of Cyrus, he is my shepherd and shall perform all my pleasure, even saying to Jerusalem, thou shalt be built, and to the temple thy foundation shall be laid.
There it is, right there. Thy foundation shall be laid, meaning that Cyrus did what?
Right. He's the one who uh allowed, and not only allowed, but as we're going to read, he financed the rebuilding of the temple.
There it is. Isaiah is a prophet of God, you understand, from long before. How
Right.
did he know? How did he know what was going to happen? You
Right.
understand? How did Jeremiah know what was going to happen? You understand?
Right.
It's amazing what the Lord does for the prophets and for this nation or what have you. You
Right.
understand that if you don't know where to go, if you lost, you understand, look to the home of the truth. Look to the home of the prophets,
Right.
the school of the prophets. That's what you should do. You understand? Because he never fails to lead 7,000 that have not knelt their, bent their knee to Baal.
Right.
Okay, I'm paraphrasing, but you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Right.
Okay, so that was it. So we're gonna go into the Antiquities of the Jews by Josephus.
Yes, sir. Let me see here. So this is
How does
out of the works of Josephus, the Antiquities of the Jews, uh book 11, chapter 1, and the heading is How Cyrus, king of the Persians, delivered the Jews out of Babylon and suffered them to return to their own country and to build their temple, for which work he gave them money. So let's look at number 1. In the first year of the reign of Cyrus, which was the 70th from the day that our people were removed out of their own land into Babylon, God commiserated the captivity and calamity of these poor people, according as he had foretold to them by Jeremiah the prophet before the destruction of the city, that after they had served Nebuchadnezzar and his posterity, and after they had undergone the servitude 70 years, he would restore them again to the land of their fathers, and they should build their temple and enjoy their ancient prosperity.
he gave a secondhand account? You understand? He gave a secondhand account of what happened in his in his captivity up under the Romans. You understand? He was afforded to write this book that mirror and give credence to what happened in the Bible. It wasn't like he took these the records of the Bible and copied them word for word in his breakdown of these complete works. His 4 or 5 books that he have in here that he wrote about the history of his people. Okay,
Kind of one
and
kind.
also his battles against his enemies in answering them as to who we are and who we would be in the future.
Kind of one kind. It says, and these things God did afford them. Number 3, for he stirred up the mind of Cyrus and made him write this throughout all Asia. Thus saith Cyrus the king, since God Almighty hath appointed me to be king of the habitable earth, I believe that he is that God which the nation of the Israelites worship. For indeed he foretold my name by the prophets, and that I should build him a house in Jerusalem in the country of Judea.
Picture that he was tipped off that Isaiah had that Jeremiah had written about him. You understand? In the scriptures, Jeremiah the prophet had written before he even thought that he was going to be the king or what have you, that he was to come into power, and in return, you understand, like we done been in captivities, we can be in captivities,
Right.
but we don't have to be in captivities such as this kingdom right here, whereas Nebuchadnezzar, he was a little foolish and a little, off the hook with what he did to us or what have you. Much like America, where they've gone too far.
Right.
Okay, but we know how to be under a mild captivity as well. You
Right.
understand? Cyrus was such a ruler or what have you. You understand?
Right.
Uh, the Lord is going to put us back where we belong. You understand? If we do what we're supposed to do, okay,
Right.
we do our time and then go home. Okay, that's
Right.
what we fail to realize. Okay, and what you're going to learn, you understand, is the way that we're acting with one another. You understand? The way we acting with one another with this is basically when we get into the Greek and Roman section, broken down in Daniel chapter 11 as well. You understand? Further on down, the Greek and Roman fratricide, the beefing. You understand? You'll see that in the Greeks with the North and the South, right? The North and the South, the Ptolemies versus the Seleucid dynasty. Those
Right.
things right there is why we got the East Coast and West Coast beef.
Mm.
You understand? We doing what they did. Okay, you're gonna see the wickedness and how it upended them as well. How so many kingdoms was translated in and out. You understand? Until Yahweh was on the scene. You understand? To get our way back. Okay, so that's all I wanted to say right there.
Kind of one kind. If I may, can I keep reading, sir?
Kind, bring it out.
Kind of one kind. Um, it says, second paragraph. This was known to Cyrus by his reading the book which Isaiah left behind him of his prophecies. For this prophet said that God has spoken thus to him in a vision. Quote, my will is that Cyrus, whom I have appointed to be king over many and great nations, send back my people to their own land and build my temple, unquote. This was foretold by Hosea 140 years, give or take, before the
Good
temple
gracious.
was demolished.
Wow.
Accordingly, when Cyrus read this and admired the divine power, an earnest desire and ambition seized upon him to fulfill what was so written. So he called for the most eminent Jews that were in Babylon and said to them that he gave them leave to go back to their own country and to rebuild their city, Jerusalem, and the temple of God. And if I could say this, sir, like,
Go ahead.
like what we have to, what as Blacks, Hispanics, and Native Indians, we have to remember. A lot of times when we read history, we imagine white people. Like we imagine Cyrus dealing with, Edomites, when in all actuality the Jews are us. Cyrus
Right.
Cyrus was fascinated by the prophecies of a black man named Isaiah. You understand?
Exactly. Exactly. And it's so much so that they want to give us all kinds of heat about you know Paul saving the Gentiles when Paul was in front of Agrippa. Was that Agrippa?
Kind of
Where
what kind?
basically where he was like, well, damn, you almost convinced me to be a Jew or what have you.
Right.
You understand? This is the same damn thing that Cyrus was saying right here. You
Mm-hmm.
understand? He was so profound in finding out, okay, well, I took the kingdom, you understand? I'm letting all the other kingdoms go back, all the other people go back and do their thing or what have you. but who was really in charge?
Right.
Who was really about the business of putting me on the throne? He really looked into the matter and found out that the people that was in captivity from Jerusalem were sure enough the people that had the answers to why he got in charge, why he was able to defeat his enemies, and he rewarded us accordingly.
Right.
Okay?
Right. Kind. Now, if I may, sir, if I can go to what is that? Second Chronicles, if I could read it, just to show the
Okay.
scriptural evidence, because like you said, sir, as we've been talking over the last few days or weeks, if you will, that the Bible proves history other versus the other way around. That
Right.
the Bible is right. Not, the Bible, like the Bible says in Isaiah 34:16, seek ye out of the book of the Lord and read, for none of these shall fail and none shall want her mate.
Right.
That we're not waiting on archaeologists to prove the Bible. The Bible was already solidified, true and authentic. So we're gonna go to Second Chronicles 36. I'll read it for you. Second Chronicles 36 to show that we recorded these events and accounts because they were of importance.
Right.
Second Chronicles 36, verse 21. Second Chronicles 36 and 21, and it reads, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord has spoken by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom, and put it also in writing, saying, thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth hath the Lord God of heaven given me, and he hath charged me to build him an house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? The Lord his God be with him, and let him go up. If I could, General.
Go ahead.
Historians, anthropologists and things of that nature, they give these credit. They give credit to these different kings and how powerful their empires were and how dominant they were in their time and in their era. But these powerful kings in history all gave credence to the Most High.
Or they paid dearly, you understand? They bucked up against us at the wrong time and got their feelings hurt or what have you.
Right.
So
Right.
what you're saying is oh so true, or what have you. That he gave credence to the power of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's what he did when he got into power.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
And
Right.
he went back to build our temple back.
Right. Right. And a lot of that is stemmed from when he read Isaiah, and he was esteemed by the quote unquote divine nature of how he was named by name and what he would do. Because it said in verse 22, how it says, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia. Not Cyrus's own will, or Cyrus, was sleeping on his bed and thought about it. No, the Lord caused him to march into Babylon and to liberate Israel. We went from being under the Babylonians to being under the Persians, but Cyrus gave the decree for us to go and rebuild our temple, which was destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar in 2 Kings 24 and 10 through 17 during the siege of Jerusalem.
Right.
Now, let me see, in Ezra, if we go to Ezra, right, the book of Ezra, which is right after 2 Chronicles, Ezra 1 and 1,
Right.
it reads, now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah might be fulfilled, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all his kingdom and put it also in writing. Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, the Lord God of heaven hath given all the kingdoms of the earth and he hath charged me to build him an house at Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? His God be with him, and let him go up to Jerusalem, which is in Judah, and build the house of the Lord power of Israel. He is the God which is in Jerusalem. Verse 4. And whosoever remaineth in any place, where he sojourneth, let the man of his place help him with the silver, and with gold, and with goods, and with beasts, beside the freewill offering for the house of God that is in Jerusalem. And I'm going to read through 7. Then rose up the chief of the fathers of Judah and Benjamin, and the priests and the Levites, with all the men whose spirit God had raised, to go up to build the house of the Lord which is in Jerusalem. And all they that were about them strengthened their hands with vessels of silver, with gold, with goods, and with beasts, and with precious things, beside all that was willingly offered. Also Cyrus the king brought forth the vessels of the house of the Lord, which Nebuchadnezzar had brought forth out of Jerusalem, and had put them in the house of his goods. And we see that Cyrus made it a decree to give back what Nebuchadnezzar had taken. You got it, sir.
Exactly, right? And so we always got to remember that we can't join these other nations in order to, think that we got to, join them in order to survive. We
Right.
we we, we serve a power that's way greater than that. I'm gonna give you another you know little peek into what the spirit of Daniel was.
Mm.
Daniel 4:17 said, "This matter is by the decree of the watchers, and by the demand by the word of the holy ones, to the intent that the living may know that the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men." You
Mm.
understand? You can have big bad Bush, you can have big bad Trump. You understand? You can have them all, or what have you. The Lord placed them into authority and giveth it to whomsoever He will. It says, and set it up over it the basis of men. You understand? You wondering why you being you know ruled so heavily with an iron yoke, a heavy burden on your back, just like in Egypt, just like in Assyria. It's because the Lord is the author of this. Cyrus, you understand, and he want us to get a light or get a break, he'll give us a Cyrus. You understand? But then you got to look on the other side. You understand? We got a rulership that's coming.
Right.
We got a power that's going to, take over this earth, and we're going to be in rulership or what have you. Okay? Then your burden will be light. You understand? Then you will have streets paved in gold. Okay? Then will the children play in the streets without fear of harm, like it
Mm.
says in Lamentations.
Right.
Okay? Not this garbage that's going on right now.
Right.
Okay? So I just wanted to drop that on you.
Right. Kind of heavy, sir. Heavy. So, as you know, sir, for those at home, what happens is Cyrus commissioned the rebuilding of the temple, as we just read. But what happens is, of course, the heathens hate it. The heathens hate it.
Right,
Cyrus dies about seven years later. So we
right,
building the temple. We in the middle of building the temple, and his son Cambyses II is convinced by heathens, right, to halt
was it
the.
namely? What
Mhm.
was it? Namely, okay, right. So what had happened, right?
Mhm.
Um, in the Assyrian captivity, of course, where's that at First King 17?
Yes, sir.
When we went into captivity in Samaria, where the northern tribe dwelt, you understand, we they put in, they put in heathens. They brought heathens into our land when they carried us away into captivity.
Right.
Okay, they did the old switcheroo. Oh, and some of those nations still dwelled there when we came back from the Assyrian captivity. Of course, the northern tribes, a ton of them left to come to the Americas,
Right.
as it explains in Second Ezra, the 13th chapter.
Right.
Okay, so they were in the land. Okay, they were in the land. Those other nations that were placed in the land by the Assyrians, okay, were in the land. And of course, when they saw us come back into the land, we had a little time. Okay, Judah was left pretty much unscathed. That was the northern uh, the northern kingdom's captivity,
Right.
right? So, of course, when they saw us get routed out and left only the poorest of us in the land, so that they could just completely destroy us, okay,
Right.
meaning that Nebuchadnezzar he had a heavy hand on us. Didn't he burn down the temple?
Right.
He burned down and tore the city up. So they was thinking that just like the Egyptians had said one time, the Israelites are no more. You understand? They routed us in this particular battle and thought that we was just gonna be no more in remembrance. Okay,
Right.
that's how they operate. And of course, if they see us coming back together, they are the first ones to put their hand forth, you understand, against the Lord's children. That's why they got to pay. That's
Right.
why they got to pay. Because they keep
Right.
putting minding our business. So they can't see us do good for 2 seconds without trying to come up against us.
Right.
So
Kind of. Kind.
shortly after Cyrus did his thing, his son, who wasn't as strong as his father,
Right.
was told lies. You understand, much like the lies that's found in Esther by Haman. You understand? He come through the back door, sneaking in there, saying exactly what's opposite of what our real reputation is.
Right.
And we some criminals, we some crooks, this, that, or the other, or what have you. Don't help them, stop them. You understand? The whole 9 yards.
Right. Kind of. Kind. And that was the argument that was making that we wouldn't pay tribute. We wouldn't pay tribute to the king and things of that nature. But if I could read Ezra 4 and 6, where this king stopped the work in the rebuilding of the temple that Zerubbabel and the brothers with him, including Ezra, Nehemiah, what have you.
Right, because we had a bevy of kings. We had the Davidic line from the time of Babylonian, from what? Josiah, and then it went to a few other kings. And then as we were coming back into the land, Zerubbabel was the brother that had the charge to bring us back into the land.
All right. So, and we look at Ezra 4 and 6. It says, "And in the reign of Ahasuerus, in the beginning of his reign, wrote they unto him an accusation against the inhabitants of Judah and Jerusalem." And as General Kabbalah stated earlier, they began to say all kind of vile things about us. Of course, them doing what heathens do, hating on the children of Israel, and it to an avail. It worked. Where the reconstruction of the temple and us returning to our holy place was temporarily stopped. And also, I want to note that in verse 6, that where it says in the reign of Ahasuerus, that's identified through much research. If we go to the Zondervans and we look up Ahasuerus,
Let me get that for you.
kind of what kind?
Hazardous.
Because you'll see several Ahasuerus, several Xerxes throughout the scriptures, but that's why context is so important. And we can identify who this was that stopped us from building the temple.
Okay, Hazardous. I got it.
So it's toward the end. It says it's like the fourth line from the last line at the bottom. The Ahasuerus of Ezra 4 and 6.
The Azarus of Ezra 4 and 6, to whom were written accusations against the Jews of Jerusalem, is in all probability this same Xerxes, although sometimes identified with Cambius, son of Cyrus.
Right, and if you, as you see on the screen, as people see on the screen, the chronological order of the kings of Persia, it had to be Cambyses, Cambyses, son of Cyrus. That's who stopped it. Now, from that, right, from the stopping of it, not even a year later, there was another king who stepped into play. His name was Darius the Great. Darius the Great. He's the one who reissued the completion of the temple
Right.
around the year
Now,
520. Go ahead, sir.
so that was Ezra's that got started, and then who was the prophets that wrote during the time when the we were allowed to go back and start the completion of the temple?
Right. You had Ezra. You had Haggai,
Hmm.
Zerubbabel. Right. Haggai. He made mention when Haggai said, "The latter temple shall be greater than the former."
Right.
Uh, Nehemiah, Ezra, Zerubbabel.
Nehemiah. There you
Right.
go.
Kind of what kind.
So
Which
this is
Daniel
when
was alive
Nehemiah.
during this time.
Right. Exactly. He was
Right.
still around.
Right. So I wanted to read Ezra 6:1, where it says, 6:1, it says,
Hmm.
Then Darius the king made a decree, and search was made in the house of the rolls where the treasures were laid up in Babylon. And there was found at Acmetha, in the place that is in the province of the Medes, a roll, and there was a
Palace.
record. Mhm.
The palace.
Oh, kind of what kind? It's like it. There was
Hmm.
found at Acmetha in the palace that is in the province of the Medes a roll, and therein was a record thus written. Verse 3. In the first year of Cyrus the king, the same Cyrus the king made a decree concerning the house of God at Jerusalem. Let the house of God be builded, the place where they offer sacrifices, and let the foundations thereof be strongly laid. The height thereof 60 cubits, and the breadth thereof 60 cubits. Right? With three
Hmm.
rows of great stones and a row of new timber, and let the expenses be given out of the king's house.
Right.
And also let the golden and silver vessels of the house of God with Nebuchadnezzar, which Nebuchadnezzar took forth out of the temple which is at Jerusalem, and brought unto Babylon, be restored, and brought again to the temple unto the temple which is at Jerusalem, everyone to his place, and placed them in the house of God. And then it just goes on to show you that Darius the Great recommissioned what Cyrus had began in ordering and financing the reconstruction of the temple which Solomon built, which Nebuchadnezzar destroyed. Right?
So let's get Daniel 11 and 1 and 2. Let's get a
Daniel
little bit
11
of that.
and 1.
Yeah.
Count on what kind. We go there. Daniel chapter 11, verse 1. Also, I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him.
Okay.
Verse
So
2. Oh, it's like it.
we're just going to drop back on that little point right there, just so that we aren't confused about who we are who we are dealing with.
Right,
Now, I had a definition that I read earlier of about Belshazzar.
right,
Okay, Belshazzar was who was reigning. He was the son of Nabonidus, and they were co regents. Him and his father were reigning when Cyrus came and you know put an end to the Babylonian rule.
right,
Okay, Nebuchadnezzar, he passed. It was about three more cats, and then these last two cats right here that Cyrus uh, killed the son. So it says when on October 29, 5539 BC again, where it tells how the prophet Daniel had told Belshazzar and interpreted the message that was written on the wall, "Thou art weighed in the balances and are found wanting." The judgment was swift and inevitable. It says, I'm reading the definition out of the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary about Belshazzar on
Okay.
page 104. It says, Babylon fell to the Medo-Persians. Okay, Belshazzar was slain, and Darius, in the name of Cyrus, took the throne, which
Right.
explains Daniel 11 and 1. Read it again.
Kind of one kind. Daniel 11 and 1. Also, I, in the first year of Darius the Mede, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him.
Darius the Mede, in the name of Cyrus. Okay, that's that. Let's go to 2.
Verse 2. Kind of one kind. And now will I show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and the 4th shall be far richer than they all, and by his strength through his riches he shall stir up against the realm of Grecia.
Okay, so who do we got? You want to break it on down? Let's break it on down.
Kind of one kind, sir. So, as the general just broke down Daniel 11 and 1, to go to Daniel 11 and 2, in Daniel 11 and 2, where it says, behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings. Those 3 kings would have to be Cyrus the Great, Cambyses the Second, Darius the Third. Those would be the 3 kings, or not Darius the Third. Darius would be the 3rd king of those 3 kings. The Darius that reissued the construction of the temple, which is why we had to go into that first to show the presence of these different Persian kings in our history, and the power of the Most High at the same time is showing you that. Now, if I could, General, it says the 4th shall be richer, far richer than they all.
Right.
Right, which is a clue to who the 3 before him are. Which we know the richest king and of the Persian Empire was known as Xerxes the Great. Xerxes the Great. Xerxes was the 4th king of what's known as the Achaemenid Empire. He ruled from approximately 486 to 465 BC. He was the son and successor of Darius the Great. Darius was his father.
Right.
See? And he was known. He's famous for where it says, and by his strength through his riches he shall stir up all against the realm of Grecia. He was known for being in the midst of the Greco-Persian wars.
Right.
And in the Greco-Persian wars, one of the most famous battles to date would be the Battle of Thermopylae, which is where they get the movie 300 from. The Battle of Thermopylae, which was in between where you get Leonidas from, what have you. That was a real account. Aside from it being 300 men, it was actually approximately 7,000 men versus Xerxes Persians 300,000 men. So I guess it seemed like 300 men compared to the large army and how militantly equipped the Persians were, if you will. And that's what Xerxes was known for, stirring up against the realm of Grecia and
right.
subduing them. See?
Damn right.
If I could, General, if I could read a little bit about the Battle of Thermopylae.
Let's get that history. You understand? It's common. You understand? What is this part of is this the time during the Peloponnesian Wars, or I always never tied that down to the history of the Bible, the Peloponnesian Wars. Let me just get a date on that. But you can go ahead and read about the battle at Thermopylae.
Right. Count on one kind. Count on one kind. So the reason why I saw it fit to go into the Battle of Thermopylae is because this is one of the ways he stirred up all against the realm of Grecia. So if we look at it, if we look at Britannica.com, gives a little insight on it. The Battle of Thermopylae around 480 BC.
480,
Kind of,
BC.
yes, sir.
Okay, yeah. So the Peloponnesian Wars were from 431 BC to 404 BC, and they were primarily dealing with whatever happened between the Grecian states and the Romans and the Macedonians
Right.
during that time. But
Right.
this was when the Archmenian dynasty, you understand, in the form of Xerxes, was coming up against them initially.
Right.
Okay,
Right.
hold
Count on
on,
one
brother.
kind. So it says the Battle of Thermopylae. Battle in central Greece at the mountain pass of Thermopylae during the Persian Wars. The Greek forces, mostly Spartan, were led by Leonidas. After 3 days of holding their own against the Persian king Xerxes and his vast southward advancing army, the Greeks were betrayed and the Persians were able to outflank them, sending the main army in retreat. Leonidas and a small contingent remained behind to resist the advance and were defeated. And it just goes into, I'll read a little bit more. It says the Battle of Thermopylae's political origins can be traced back to Xerxes' predecessor, Darius the Great, who sent heralds to Greek cities in 491 BC in the hopes of persuading them to accept Persian authority. This offended the proud Greeks greatly. The Athenians went so far as to toss the Persian heralds into a pit, which is where you get that famous scene from
Right,
in the movie 300. That was actually real.
where he kicked them into the pit.
Right.
If you value your lives over your complete annihilation, listen carefully, Leonidas. Xerxes conquers and controls everything he rests his eyes upon. He leads an army so massive, it shakes the ground with its march. So vast, it drinks the rivers dry. All the god King Xerxes requires is this, a simple offering of earth and water, a token of Sparta's submission to the will of Xerxes.
Submission. Now that's a bit of a problem. See, rumor has it, the Athenians have already turned you down. And if those philosophers and boy lovers have found that kind of nerve, then...
We must be diplomatic.
And of course, Spartans have their reputation to consider.
Choose your next words carefully, Leonidas. They may be your last as king.
And water.
Madman. You're a madman.
Earth and water. But you'll find plenty of both down there.
No man, Persian or Greek, no man threatens a messenger.
You bring the crowns and heads of conquered kings to my city steps. You insult my queen. You threaten my people with slavery and death. Oh, I've chosen my words carefully, Persian. Perhaps you should have done the same.
This is blasphemy. This is madness.
madness. This is Sparta!
It says
That wasn't Xerxes himself that they kicked in the pit.
no,
Or was that that was a stretch?
right, that was the Persian messengers who came to give
Okay, that
them
was the messenger. Okay.
count on kind. It says this offended the proud Greeks greatly. The Athenians went so far as to toss the Persian heralds into a pit, while the Spartans followed suit and tossed them into a well. In 480 BC, Xerxes invaded Greece as a continuation of Darius' original plan, his father. He began the same way his predecessor had. He sent heralds to the Greek cities, but he skipped over Athens and Sparta because of their previous responses. Many Greek city-states either joined Xerxes or remained neutral, while Athens and Sparta led the resistance with a number of other city-states behind them. Before invading, Xerxes implored the Spartan king Leonidas to surrender his arms. Leonidas famously replied, "Come and take them." Xerxes intended to do just that and thus moved toward Thermopylae. A little more here. Xerxes led a vast army overland from the Dardanelles, accompanied by a substantial fleet moving along the coast. His forces quickly seized northern Greece and began moving south. The Greek resistance tried to halt Persian progress on land at the narrow pass of Thermopylae and at the sea nearby the Straits of Artemisium. The Greek army was led by Leonidas, who was estimated to have had around 7,000 men. Xerxes, on the other hand, had anywhere from 70,000 to 300,000 men. Despite the disparity in numbers, the Greeks were able to maintain their position. Their strategy involved holding a line only a few dozen yards long between a steep hillside and the sea. And then it goes on to how eventually they fell to the Persians that were just outnumbered. But that goes to show how Daniel prophesied all of that. You understand? He prophesied of, how through the power of the Most High, it was just showing how true the Bible is, how the fourth king, which was not reigning during the time Daniel 11 was being written, how his strength and through his riches he shall stir up against all the realm of Grecia.
Damn right.
And also this Xerxes is the Xerxes or the Ahasuerus in Esther.
Exactly. Right. And so how did let's see. Let's get the time frame on Daniel 11 and was that verse 3 or verse 4 with this other fool that came into power. You understand? Meaning that okay, he had many exploits, but he didn't get the job done. You understand? Esau was on the scene for good. He didn't basically broke the yoke
Right.
off of his neck, and you understand, and he was just warming up. Okay,
Right.
he was just warming up. So when did that fool, the Macedonian Empire,
Right.
come into play, which birthed, you understand, one of our greatest, precursors to, troubled times,
Right.
all the way up until the time of Yahweh.
Kind of one kind. So in history, because if we look at Daniel 11 and 3, it says, "And a mighty king shall stand up, that shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will." Now, this mighty king here, if we going through the chronological time and through extensive research and what have you, that mighty king is pointed to be Alexander.
Right.
Alexander, the so-called great, really Alexander the Greek. You understand?
Mm-hmm. And so you have you got 336 BC to 323 BC.
Yes, sir.
Do you have anything on his father the Macedonians. Can we look up anything on
Philip of
the
Macedon.
Macedonians? Yeah.
Kind of one kind. I know Philip of Macedon was famous for, you know, his military wit and his introduction of what's known as the Macedonian phalanx. It's a strategic
Military maneuver,
right.
battlefield maneuvering.
Mm-hmm. Right. Let me see. Philip of Macedon.
Yeah, so this is him, Philip the Second of Macedon, of 382 BC to 333 BC.
Right.
Right, so it was about what, 4 or 5. How many Persian wars? It was quite a few of them.
It was quite a few of them. Quite a few battles.
Right. So you had the Armenian Empire tried to handle all of that. You understand? They dealt with the Ionians. They dealt with the Battle of Marathon. You understand? They had the battle at Thermopylae.
Right.
Okay, all of that was going on, and you understand, the Greeks and the Romans were in the background too. You
Right.
understand? About to,
Right. And
run shot over the whole zone that basically the Armenian dynasty, they had, that whole swath of land all the way over to damn near India, from southern Europe, you
right.
understand, all the way across to, India. So
Right.
when
Kind of.
Alexander the Greek came on, okay, of course he damn near took all of the stuff that they had, you understand, in like fashion.
Right. If I may,
Go ahead.
if at one of the famous battles, because the Persian king at the time was Darius the Third. This would be Darius the Third.
Okay.
Darius the Third was the king to which he was the last. He was the king that encountered directly with Alexander the Great. I had a little bit of information on him.
Let's go.
Darius the Third was the last Achaemenid king of Persia, reigning from 336 BC to his death in 330 BC. In 334 BC, Alexander the Great began his invasion of the Persian Empire and subsequently defeated the Persians in several battles before looting and destroying their capital. With the Persian Empire now effectively under Alexander's control, Alexander then decided to pursue Darius III. Before Alexander reached him, however, Darius was killed by his relative Besus, who was also at satrap of Bactria, Slakia. And the famous battle between Alexander and Darius III was the Battle of Issus. And the Battle of Issus happened in 333 BC between the Hellenic League, led by Alexander, and of course Darius and the Persians. It was the second great battle in the Alexander's conquest of Asia, if you will.
Okay.
And of course the Greeks. There's a lot of famous art behind it as well, as people can see on the screen. But that's critical to know, because Alexander took down one of the largest empire almost single-handedly, which was
Very quickly too.
right, very quickly, which was prophetic, which is why he was the in Daniel 7 and in Daniel chapter 8, he was referred to these swift animals. You understand? Which was a
The leopard.
right,
What was that?
the leopard with the 4 heads and 4 wings, and then the goat, the he goat, I'm referring to in Daniel 8.
Exactly. Definitely get that. So
Yes,
you
sir.
have illustration that shows these kingdoms that Daniel prophesied and the corresponding beast that was associated with them. You understand? Everybody always, you know, wondering, what that was all about.
Which one? The leopard?
No, all of them. Let's just give a rendition of all of the kingdoms that were represented by Daniel's prophecies.
Oh, kind of one kind. So I could go to Daniel 7.
Let me
Daniel
see if we got
7.
a illustration.
Oh, like a picture.
Yes.
Okay, kind of one
I'm
kind.
not. I'm not sure, but I'm not seeing what you're seeing. I'm just seeing myself at the
Oh
time. I'm
yeah,
not
kind of one
sure.
kind. I was saying in post production, I put up the pictures and stuff, and they can see it.
No sweat. No sweat.
So they see the different four beasts. They're looking at the four beasts right now.
Okay.
You had the leopard with four heads and four wings, and you had the bear with the three ribs in his mouth.
But hold on. Let's go back. Which one is which?
Oh,
Is the
kind of one
question.
kind. I could read it. Daniel 7.
Kind.
Kind of one kind. So Daniel 7:1. Yeah, Daniel 7:1. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and vision of his head upon his bed, and he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Daniel spake and said, I saw in my vision by night, and behold, the four winds of the heaven strove upon the great sea. And four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse one from another. The four great beasts came up from the sea, diverse from one from another. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plucked, and it was lifted up from the earth and made stand upon his feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. And behold, another beast, a second, like to a
So
bear.
who was the first beast?
The first beast was the Babylonian Empire.
There you go.
The lions with eagle's wings represent Babylon with her, swift conquest. That's the eagle's wings, or what have you.
Exactly.
The second beast, verse 5, and behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had three ribs in the mouth of it between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh. All right. The bear was the Medo-Persian Empire, and the three ribs in its mouth represent the three major conquests of the enemies prior. And then it goes on to the third, what verse is that? 6. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it four wings of a fowl. The beast had also four heads, and dominion was given to it.
Okay.
That was Greece.
That was the Grecian Empire.
Right.
Okay.
And the wings represent and show the swiftness of Alexander's campaign, through how he conquered much of the known world during the time. And some scholars, some historians believe in 4 years. It's pretty quick.
Exactly.
And then you had the fourth beast. Where's it at? Verse 7. And after this I saw in the night visions, and behold, a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, and strong exceedingly, and it had great iron teeth. It devoured and brake in pieces, and stamped the residue with the feet of it. And it was diverse from all the beasts that were before it, and it had 10 horns. That was the Roman Empire.
There it is. There it is. With a little designation of who that little horn would be in the last days.
Right.
Okay. So we're living in it.
Right.
Just to make sure you know. Okay.
Kind of what kind. And then also in the scriptures, if we go to 1 First Maccabees. I'll read it to show that Daniel, or it's like it, not Daniel, but where's my
You want First
11
Maccabees
and
1?
1? I mean, chapter 1, verse 1.
Yeah.
That mighty king, that first king, who that was.
They took some books out of the Bible and we found them. It's
Right,
called the Apocrypha. Okay.
right,
It's 14 books that they took out of the Bible. Okay.
right,
But if you know anything about the King James version of the Bible, it had these 14 books in that original 1611 version. Okay.
right.
So you're gonna run that down for them.
Count one kind. First Maccabees, uh, King James version, chapter 1, verse 1. And it reads, and it happened after that Alexander, son of Philip, the Macedonian, who came out of the land of Chittim, had smitten Darius, king of the Persians and Medes, that he reigned in his stead, the first over Greece.
The first of Greece. Right? He took all of the lands of the Armenian dynasty. You understand? And he did it in swift fashion.
Right,
Okay.
right.
Read verse 2.
Kind of one kind, and made many wars and won many strongholds and slew the kings of the earth, and went through to the ends of the earth and took spoils of many nations, insomuch that the earth was quiet before him. Whereupon he was exalted and his heart was lifted up.
You understand? He was a proud bastard. You understand? He conquered so much. You understand? And just like it says, Jacob waxed fat and kicked or what have you.
Right,
This cat destroyed until he could destroy no more. The Lord killed him right thereafter.
right.
Or
At a
what
young
have you.
age.
And where's the prophecy, you understand, stating that you understand that it would not go to his posterity? This is verse 5?
Um,
Or is it verse 4?
right. Verse
Daniel,
verse 4
Daniel.
in Daniel 11 and 4, where it says, and when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken and shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven, and not to his
Okay.
posterity.
Okay. You understand? Not to his posterity, right? Meaning that
Mm-hmm.
the seed of Alexander the Greek did not sit on the throne thereafter. Okay.
Right,
There was a talk of heirs after him or what have you, but it did not last at all. It didn't last at all. And are we going to go back to the Apocrypha and read, or are we going to finish in verse 4?
I could
It
read
was
4.
scattered to the four winds. Okay, these four winds are going to have a representation in the scriptures and in history, as you will shortly see. Go ahead.
Count on one kind. Count on one kind. Daniel 11 and 4. And when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and and shall be divided toward the four winds of heaven, and not to his posterity, nor according to his dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those.
You understand?
And and if I could, the four winds. Oh, you want me to read it in the Maccabees, sir?
The Maccabees. The Maccabees. Let me just give them a little commentary. It says Alexander's kingdom was broken after his death. It says his brother Philip Ahirides, then his son Alexander Aegeus, was killed while ruling for a short time. So it was divided toward the four winds. The four winds were the north, south, east, and west, right? And so what you're about to read is the prophecy that Daniel had brought out way
Right.
before Alexander was even on the throne. Go ahead.
Right. And those the four generals who who were with him through a lot of his conquests was by name Seleucus, Ptolemy, Cassander, and Lysimachus.
Right.
And the areas of which they took over consisted of Egypt, Babylonia and Syria, Asia Minor, uh, and Macedonia and Greece. The two more.
Cassander was in Macedonia and Greece.
Right.
Lysimachus was in Thrace and Asia Minor. Then you had the two major ones.
Right.
Um, Ptolemy Soter, he was in control of Egypt, Palestine, and Phoenicia.
Right.
And then you had Seleucid, which became a dynasty. Seleucid one replaced um, Antigonus from Babylonia and Syria.
Right.
Okay, which was then moved over into the Roman venue, so to
Right.
speak.
Right.
All right.
And if I could, what was going on between those general, of course, like with every Edomite and how they run their nation, it would began to be war amongst those generals,
Damn right.
and they were known as the Diadochi Wars.
Right.
The Diadochi Wars. I got it right here. Because they're only, as we'll read, there are only two prominent generals and that had actual dynasties. The wars of the Diadochi were a series of conflicts that were fought between the generals, which is Latin for Diadochi, or for generals. They disputed over the rule of his empire after his death, and they fought from anywhere from 322 BC to 281 BC. And we know that, like I said, the two more prominent ones was the north and the south, which would be the Seleucid and the Ptolemaic, which was over Egypt. The Ptolemies, or the Seleucids, was over Syria and Babylonia. And Israel is in the middle. So they were fight. A lot of the fight was who was over.
Yeah,
We were right in the middle, sir.
boy. That's why they what do they call that? The geographical location of Israel.
The Fertile Crescent.
No, not the Fertile Crescent. It's another geographical term that they use, meaning it's like a land bridge or what have you.
Mm,
Like it joined, of course, Africa and Europe, and then also it spanned off to the east into Asia Minor or Asia as well. You know what
right.
I'm saying? So you know what I'm saying? It's like a land bridge or what have you.
Mm,
And every time somebody wanted to do something, you understand, they always was looking across to get Egypt. They was always looking to get into to Europe or what have you, and
right.
take spoils from that. You know what I'm saying? So we were constantly, in the mix.
Right in the
You know what I'm
mix, in
saying?
the middle of it all.
You know it.
Because being in the middle of the wars of the Seleucids and the Ptolemies, and there a lot of the fight was who was gonna have control over Israel.
Exactly. Like we always the prize. You understand? We never the punk. We always the prize. Okay.
Right,
Whoever had us, you understand? You understand, from Egypt, the Assyrians, you understand? They knew that if they had us, you understand, that they had the favor of the whole world at that point
right,
in time. Meaning they ruled the whole world. If they included our land in the destruction of whatever it is that they were trying to accomplish, then they was the bomb. They was on and popping. If they was able to hold us, you know what I'm saying?
Count on one kind. Count on one kind.
We will not be
Cons,
held. Okay.
sir. That was the first. I mean, the, we went over the siege, the original siege of Jerusalem, and we touched on that. We touched on the how Nebuchadnezzar led captives. We gave some dates on that, some time frames on that, or what have you, and the
It's so
time
much
period.
history. Hmm.
So like it, sir.
I said it's so much history.
Right, right. We gave some history on how Babylon fell, and how the Persians came into power, which was all prophesied in the scriptures, which shows like all of everything we're going into, the prophetic aspect of things and how the prophecies were fulfilled. Like Habakkuk said, the division is
Now,
set upon tables, and at the latter
now,
shall speak.
right. Now, do we have any historical archaeology? I'm thinking it was like the Assyrian captivity. I'm thinking with the pictures of us going into the captivity is
Yep,
written on the walls.
kind
I
sir.
mean, it's unprecedented. You understand that it looking just like Hebrews. You
Right,
understand braids. You
right,
understand fringes. You understand
right,
Negro noses, the
right,
whole nine.
right,
Okay, it's undoubted
right, right,
that we were those people. Okay, all the way from the walls of Egypt on to the Babylonian walls, the Assyrian walls, or what have you. We
right,
have been depicted. We have been shown to be those people that were in that land. Okay.
right. And for those of you at home watching, Daniel was about approximately 300 years before Alexander ever existed, and he
Exactly.
prophesied and had vision. That shows the power of the God of Israel and how his word is true. How
I
he,
tell you, I mean, it's like John the Revelator, and he's sitting in the cave or what have you. Daniel sitting in captivity, writing about other troubles that we would go into under other heathens or what have you later on down in the sieges and the wars and the destruction that would happen to us at that time. You know what I'm saying? And it's
right.
damn near verbatim, word for word. How did it happen? How did
Mm-hmm.
it happen? How did Cyrus see that it happen? And he knew, you understand, the power of the Most High.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
He knew the power of the Most High. Okay? So
Right.
this thing goes hand in hand, you understand, with what history tells us as well. And there's no way that these was devils. You understand?
Right.
These was not devils. Okay?
God, sir. God, sir. But absolutely. So that was from giving you the history. We had to go into the history. We had to go into the prophecies. Of course, there's a lot more to go into. To cram it all into one video wouldn't be fair to the viewer. So we're gonna do this in segments. We did it with the Babylonian and Persian aspect leading up to Daniel 11, and then we covered up to the four generals. Um, we covered Daniel 11, chapter 11, verses 1 through 4. And the next video, we're going to start at 5 up
Right.
until, up until. So, was there
Switch
any,
over from the Greeks into the Romans. You understand? I
right,
mean, Daniel 11 is completely amazing at the accuracy of actually what happened. It was
right,
like they were, performing a script, but you can find these records in their documentation of what happened. You
right,
understand? They were, Epiphanes was so bad that he was like, you know, I'm burning every book you got. I'm getting
right,
rid of all of that. You know what I'm saying? And then like some of the Ptolemies, they was like, okay, yeah, we gonna keep the books. We gonna put it in Greek. Okay,
right,
the whole Hellenistic period, the Hellenizing of Jews by us being made to speak Greek and take on Greek customs, all of that's going to come out in Daniel 11th chapter. We're going to bring it out in many sources, and we're going to examine this thing or what have
Kind,
you,
sir.
show you the power of the Most High, you know what I'm saying, through His prophets.
Kind,
Okay?
sir. And that's heavy what you said. That's where they get the Library of Alexandria from.
Exactly. It's in there.
You know, so the water to everybody that tuned in. There's going to be another part of this. This might be done in a few parts, but this was definitely necessary to go into. We got a lot more information, a lot more heavy hitting information to go into and bring out. I'm grateful to have none other than General Kabbalah on here, rocking it out with us, breaking down this, important information and heavy information. It's a lot of history, it's a lot of information to go into. So with that being said, until next time, we're gonna say Shalom, Israel.
Come to the I.S.U.P.K.
That's right.